How's everybody doing? All right. I said, how is everyone doing? Woo! Welcome to Truth Be Told, the first annual interscholastic all PPS Story Slam. My name is Andrew Dixon, and it is my pleasure to be here to be your host tonight. And I'll just to sort of set the stage, I'll talk a little bit about storytelling. I think if 6 or 7 years ago you had mentioned storytelling to me, I might have envisioned a parent reading or telling a child to, oh yeah, here we go. There we go. I have a loud voice, so it almost doesn't matter. One more time. How's everyone doing? There we go. So I think if 6 or 7 years ago you had mentioned storytelling to me, I think I would have thought about a parent reading a story to a child or telling a story to a child, or maybe someone who went on an adventure or vacation that didn't, was okay, sort of embellishing the facts later on to their friends and kind of making it sound more interesting than it was. But about 5 years ago, I got an incredible opportunity to join The Moth. So who's familiar with The Moth? Almost everyone. So for the few of you who aren't, it is a nonprofit based in New York City that's dedicated to true stories told live. So there's a podcast and you can listen on the radio, but really the best way to experience The Moth is in person at live events just like this one. So for the past 5 years, every month, at least once, I have gotten to host, unfortunately, a 21 and over show. I don't know why, it's always 21 and over, boo! And I've gotten to hear probably 600 stories every night. It's 10 people. Anyone can come and put their name in the hat to tell a story on the theme. And it has been unbelievable. I have gotten to know some of the regulars. I have learned their life over the course of 15 5-minute stories. There are regulars who have come month after month, year after year, before they finally summoned up the courage to put their name in the hat and tell a story. Sometimes someone will just hear about it, they'll come, they'll say, oh, this seems fun, they'll put their name in the hat and win on the very first time they've ever come. So much like tonight, The Moth is judged. And I think what I love about it is you experience comedy and tragedy and just every human emotion through these stories. And so I think I've really come to understand that storytelling is an art form. You can have a great story, say going skiing with the Dalai Lama. And if you're just like, I went skiing with the Dalai Lama, it was great. I mean, that's not a great story, But if you say, all right, here's a crazy thing. I've never been skiing before. I'm scared of snow. And I don't know anything about Tibetan Buddhism. But 2 years ago, and you sort of string someone along, you make it an even better story. So I think I've seen some of the best storytellers. They can take an anecdote, they can take some small little detail and turn it into this yarn that you just are hanging on every word. So I think, though, even a year or two ago, if you were to have told me that storytelling can change the world, I would have said, well, it helps us empathize with each other, it helps us connect, it helps us bond, we gather in these spaces and we turn off our phones. I should probably turn off my phone, you should turn off your phone if you haven't already. I'm going to turn off the ringer at the very least. And if that's changing the world, sure, then stories can change the world. But I think watching the Black Lives Matter movement and seeing what Me Too and how that is affecting every industry, and just in the last couple weeks, seeing the power of high school students who are sharing their experience and putting into context and using their voice, they are changing the world. They are affecting the policies of some of the biggest corporations in the world, and it is powerful. And it all starts with storytelling. It all starts with finding your voice, putting your name in the hat, and getting up here and sharing your truth. So we are part of something pretty awesome tonight. Let's give it up for our storytellers who are going to share their stories. And I don't know. I have no idea what these stories are. I would expect that we will run the gamut of emotion. There will probably be, I'm hoping there might be a funny story or two. And I think even when you think about stand-up comedy, is anyone else old enough to remember when stand-ups would just get up and tell a joke? And then they tell another joke? And then they tell another joke? And that was it. They just told jokes. Now, all the best stand-up comedians are storytellers. And they sprinkle funny insights, or they reflect on their story and their experiences in a funny way. So storytelling's hot. Storytelling's where it's at. You guys are in the place to be right now here on the West Coast, not just in Portland. So welcome. So tonight is really exciting because we are celebrating winners, right? So we have the winner of a Story Slam at Madison, Franklin, Grant, Jefferson, and Wilson. So all of our storytellers are veterans already. They have been part of a slam. They won. They're here tonight to represent PPS and their high school and great storytelling. So here's how it's going to work. They have all gotten their order, their number. So when I call their name, they're going to come up to the microphone. I'm going to adjust the mic because I'm very tall. And they are going to launch into their story. It's going to be a true story about something that happened to them. And it's on the theme of... Oh, you guys are good readers. You read ahead. And then we have a sort of a 5-minute suggestion. So storytellers, at the 5-minute mark, Pardis is going to start. Oh, there, we've got a magic wand. It was not working until 4 seconds ago, and now it's the power of storytelling. It made the batteries work. So at the 5-minute mark, if you see that, just think to yourself, okay, it's not the end of the world. I've got 1 more minute. And you want to start wrapping your story up, like if you're still on the 2nd act, maybe get to that 3rd act, because at the 6-minute mark, you're gonna see or vaguely hear one of these, right? So that's the sort of, maybe go the other way for 6, right? And so at that point, the longer you go on this, the more your score will slightly be affected by our judges. So we have, ladies and gentlemen, 5 esteemed judges from the storytelling and literary community here in Portland. I'm going to introduce them, but I think I'm actually going to introduce them after the first storyteller, because what I want to be able to do after each storyteller is to give them a chance to judge. So they will be getting introduced and judging at the same time, but they're very talented. They can handle that. They're okay. And then at the end of the night, we are going to announce a winner after we all get up here and take photos, and we will announce the winner of the first annual Interscholastic Story Slam here in Portland, Oregon. Any other details we need to mention? All right. So you guys have a very important job, right? I'll be up here for a couple minutes in between each storyteller. So if you need to run to the loo, which I should mention is out those doors, from the stage to the left, right before you get all the way there. If you need to get some water, if you've got a cough you've been suppressing for the last couple minutes, do it on my time. But when these storytellers are up here, I want you to give your full attention to them. Sound good? And when I call their name, I want you guys to go bananas. And when they're done with their story, I want you to also go to bananas. Don't go to bananas. Go bananas. There's no place called bananas, all right? So, without further ado, your first storyteller of the eve, representing Jefferson High School, Mektis Halete! Woo! How's that feel?
Okay, I'm really short. Hello, everybody. So how are you doing? Good. Okay, so I never get in trouble. Let me take you back to my 6th grade year, and I was back in Ethiopia where I was born and raised. So one day I was walking with my friend, his name is Sammy, and me and Sammy were walking, and I saw him holding a water bottle. And I said, oh my gosh, what if we play with water? And when you live in a 3rd world country, the first thing that you are taught not to do is play with water. Because water is very scarce, and you don't play with water. But I said, let's do it. And me and Sammy called our friends. I called the girls, he called the boys, and we said, oh my gosh, this is gonna be a battle. It's gonna be boys versus girls. Let's do it. And so we called all our friends, and we went to the back of the school and started splashing water at each other. Somebody slipped, we got all wet, like from the top to our shoes, like from our hair. Our uniform was so wet and soaked, but we just kept playing. And it was a lot of fun, we laughed. It was just a great experience. So we started doing it again the next morning. And I told Sammy the same thing, and we called our friends and got back to that same space that we had been playing in. And we started playing, but we ran out of water. And we were like, oh, you know, we're in the middle of it, we're not gonna stop. So we went and got water that was stored for emergency time. And we got that water and started splashing again, playing, and it was just the ground was just wet, and our uniform was just wet, and we just wasted a whole bunch of water, and we said, okay, we're done, let's go home. And I was walking home, and I was so cold, and it was freezing, and I was walking, and I was walking, and when I looked up, there was the dean in front of my face, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, what did I get myself into?" And he said, "You guys were playing with water, aren't you?" And I was like, oh, he's gonna tell my father. This is the end of it. This is the end of my school career. This is what is going to bring me down. And he said, "Tomorrow morning, you're gonna come to this school. You're gonna stand on the stage in front of everybody, and you're gonna apologize to every single person in the school." And I said, oh my gosh. The water that was so freezing me turned into fire. I was like, oh my gosh, this is burning me. And I went home and I couldn't sleep. Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I told myself, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. What if my father hears this? And I said, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna go to school. And I thought, oh, but my father will ask me, and I've never been late to school, so this is not gonna happen. So I went to school and I waited. The assembly came. There was silence. Minutes passed, and the assembly ended. The dean, who was so old, forgot what he told me the night before, and he never remembered it for the rest of the year. And I don't believe he remembers it now either. So that's how I got out of trouble when I was in 6th grade.
Congratulations. Give it up for Mechties, a little bit more.
That reminds me a little bit of a time my friends threw me a surprise birthday party when I was in 8th grade at my house, and things got a little out of control, and water balloons were created, and they were thrown, and they started to get thrown in the house. My parents got so angry with me, and I was like, this was not my idea. This is a surprise party. You guys sanctioned it. I'm not responsible. But I did get in a little trouble. All right, so without further ado, let us get to know our judges. We have five judges. We have Ramiza Koya. Ramiza, give him a little wave. I know you're judging. She is a writer of fiction and nonfiction, and she is the director of the youth programs at Literary Arts, ladies and gentlemen. Very cool. We have Brian S. Ellis, who is a storyteller, a poet. He teaches storytelling, in fact, and he is one of the producers of Backfence PDX, which is having its 10th anniversary show this Saturday at the Aladdin. Is it sadly 21 and over? He doesn't know. He doesn't. Your class is all ages? When's your next class?
It's in the spring. It's on the PCC, Continuing Education.
PCC, Continuing Education. You can take a class with Brian S. Ellis. We have Mel Wells, who is a writer. She is a surfer, the founder of Beefcake Swimwear, and she is also part of the youth programs at Literary Arts. And then we have Matt Brown, one of the owners of Bunk Sandwiches. Not only has he appeared on the Moth Story Slam stage, he has won it and graduated to the Grand Slam, which is where the winners compete in Battle Royale with new stories. And finally, we have Santi Holly, who is a writer, a essayist, a journalist. He has written for Vice, Tin House, and is a regular at the Portland Mercury. He is also a recent recipient of the 2017 Oregon Literary Fellowship for Nonfiction. Give it up for Santi and all our judges. Now, judges, has that given you sufficient time to judge? In that case, you guys know the drill. Hailing from Grant High School, make some noise for Sarah Mellinger! Woo! There it is. How's that feel right there?
I'm not talking, I'm not starting the time. So I am always late, and as you could imagine, that has a great potential for trouble. I think it was genetically coded within me. I was 19 days late to my own birth. The night before the first day of finals last semester, though, I knew I had to break the problem. The past semester has given me higher stress levels and lower grade than I've ever had before. So I got into bed at 10 p.m. the night before finals, and I thought to myself, you will get up early tomorrow. And I thought that to myself for 2.5 hours. The next morning, I woke up to find my mother and my alarm clock screaming at me because I had 10 minutes to get up. So I was like, okay, you can do this. 2 minutes to brush my teeth, 8 minutes to get dressed. I was ready. I was putting on my boots, and I took a moment to breathe. And in that magical, mystical way that time seems to just move around me, 7 minutes elapsed, and my bus was going to arrive in 2 minutes. So I turned to my mother, and before I could even ask for a ride, she had the car keys in her hand and the door unlocked, and we booked it. However, we got to the bus stop, and in the distance, you could see the back of the yellow school bus. What could we do? We followed it. At the first red light, there were 3 cars in between the bus and us. My mother turned to me, looked at the stopped bus, and said, "Go!" And I was out, and I ran. But do you see these stumpy legs? They are not meant for walking, far much less running. I have a 30-pound backpack. Doctors have told me it's not safe. Nevertheless, I ran until the light turned green, and I turned around, and I went back to the car, and back we went along the way to 21st, following the bus that my sister was in. She does this thing where she gets up 20 minutes before me and has a breakfast, and I should really do it because it'll improve my stress levels, but no. I'm not meant to wake up before 7. Nevertheless, we went on that bus all the way to the next red light, the overpass over the bridge along 21st that connects to Highway 84. The bus would turn onto that highway, and that just couldn't happen. My mother had to get to work, and the best solution we would have is that I would go to the max stop and be an hour late. So the light was red, and I get out of the bus, the car, and I run. There are 5 cars between me. I can feel the stares of the cars looking at me, the car drivers, wondering what the hell this little girl is doing running alongside the street. Halfway there, the light turns green, and I am crushed. These finals were supposed to be my redemption. Miraculously, though, the cars aren't moving. I look around me and I realize that this is the overpass that always has that construction. Far beyond my sight, there must be a person with a sign conducting traffic, and I yell at the top of my lungs, "Stop!" I don't know if he knew what that meant or if he heard me, but I got there to the bus anyway. The bus is not expecting me. I rap on the door, and the bus driver just looks at me. He He knows me. This is not our first rodeo. Not the first time I have even run after this same bus. Without a word, he opens the doors, and I walk onto the bus. This is the latest I have ever been! I yelled. I expect a full celebration for me. I go, woo! In this terribly embarrassing way. All the people on the bus do is nothing. The person next to me, who has witnessed my surprise entrance onto the bus, kind of goes, what can you do? The moral of the story is that you can get yourself out of trouble, but all teenagers will do, apathetic to their core, is golf clap.
Make a little more noise for Sarah Mellinger! All the way from Grant High School. Now, I don't know if this is a technical term, but a fellow storytelling producer once explained the technique she just used there as elongation, where you take a moment, and in the storytelling, you actually take that moment of running from the car to the bus, which probably took 6 seconds, but she spread it out over 2 marvelous minutes so we could really feel that and be there with her. I bet it did. One more time, give it up for Sarah. So I want to call out a couple folks here. We've got Mona Schreier, who is our math genius. So she is going to be calculating the judges' scores. I should mention that we're going to throw out the top and lowest from each judge. I think they've got 5 categories they're judging in. So we'll take the middle 3 scores, and that's how Mona's going to work things. Pardis Navi is our timekeeper, and she is the holder of the pink wand. We've got Tim Elmer taking photos. Selfie time, Tim. We've got Brian Robertson from PPS TV Services. There he is. Woo! And then Trish Wynn did the logo. Yeah, the logo that got us in here, the wayfinding and the beautiful logo on our programs, truth be told. And then our producers tonight are Nancy Sullivan. Woo! Paige Battle. And Sunny Childs. We'll see them all up here at the end of the night, but a huge round of applause for all the librarians from all these schools who have really worked together and really funded this thing and just are the driving force behind it. So we'll get a chance to acknowledge and recognize them soon enough. All right, are we good, judges? All right. In that case, up next, we have, representing Franklin High School, Asha Fusen! Yeah, I think she can hold the microphone, right? Heck yeah!
Okay. Hi. So this summer, my friends and I played this game called The Floor is Lava. And the way it works is, out of the blue, someone will yell, "The floor is lava," and then everyone has 5 seconds to find a spot that isn't on the floor, or you'll get burned by the lava. And so one summer evening, my friend and I were walking home when we paused about a block away from my house, and she yelled, "The floor is lava." And so I was scrambling to find a spot, but there was nowhere to stand. The only thing I could see was the sidewalk. So finally, my time was almost up, and out of desperation, I jumped into the yard of this little blue house. And I only had a second to catch my breath before the owner of the house, young woman, maybe in her 30s, stepped out onto her front porch and started yelling at me. She was screaming, "What the hell are you doing in my yard? And what did you drop?" Now, I hadn't dropped anything. The only thing I even had in my hand was a tissue, which was still in my hand, but I guess my fight or flight response kicked in because I just turned to my friend and yelled, "Run!" And so we raced up my block to my house. I opened the door, we went in, closed the door, locked it, and then I went to my basement and crouched down, and my friend went to my living room. Now, I don't know why we separated. I think it was just the panic of the moment, but since we were separated and we're teenagers, we started FaceTiming, and we were just looking at each other through our phones when I heard a knocking on my front door. And this wasn't just knocking, this was pounding, slamming on the door, and the woman's voice, she had followed us, was yelling, screaming at me, demanding I come out, demanding I tell her what I had dropped. And with how quickly she had gotten to my front door, not only would she have to have been chasing us, but she would have had to have been running too. And as if that wasn't bad enough, she started trying my doorknob. She was rattling, trying to get in. Luckily, I'd had the sense to lock my front door. And so she was shaking it, and the panes on my door were rattling, and then suddenly, there was just silence. And so I listened, and I crept up my basement steps to where my friend was in the living room, and we peeked out the front window, and there was no one there. The porch was empty. So we just kind of sat there looking at each other for a second when I heard another knocking on the front door. And so I had a heart attack, and I looked out the window again, and I was so relieved. It was just my neighbor Maya. A lot of times in the summer, she'll come over to use my trampoline. And so I unlocked the door and I opened it, and I was laughing, and I was gonna explain to her what had just happened and who we had thought she was when I looked behind her. And on the sidewalk, standing there, was the woman with her arms crossed, just looking at me. And so Maya explained to me that she had been in my backyard when the woman had come from my front porch around to my backyard with the intention of getting in through my back door when she had seen Maya and told Maya she had to come to my front porch and get me to come out. And so now I had to talk to this woman, right? I mean, she was basically holding Maya hostage. So I was just getting ready to when my parents came home. At that very same moment, they'd been out to dinner, and as I saw them walking up the sidewalk towards the woman, I let out a sigh of relief. They were here, they had come to rescue me, I didn't have to interact with this lady. But then I noticed something interesting, which was that the moment the other adults arrived, the woman's demeanor just entirely changed. Gone was this psychopath who had just tried to break into my house. She was calm, even laughing, explaining to my parents what had happened. And they were glaring at me, and now I was in trouble. And sure enough, I had to go and apologize to the woman. And so I did, and when she was finally satisfied, she left, and I explained to my parents what had actually happened. And they believed me. And it felt good to be believed. Now, I've noticed that adults have the tendency of hearing each other's voices louder than the voices of teenagers. And I knew the only way I could get my voice heard was to get the woman to go away. And so even though it was unfair that I had to apologize, I mean, I hadn't really done anything wrong. She had just tried to break into my house. I still did. Because to me, in that moment, safety and security were more important than justice or fairness. Thank you.
Give it up for Asha! The hometown storyteller here representing Franklin. So what often happens in storytelling is you get sort of transported to your own moment. So that moment when you jumped just into the lawn for a moment took me back to my eBay power selling days. Is that even still a thing? Do people still do eBay? Are there still I was an eBay power seller, and I actually did a show about it, and I ended up getting cast in a TV commercial with the Portland Trailblazers, where I played Jenga with a punk rocker and Derek Anderson, who was our shooting guard, who was supposed to be a superstar. He didn't quite make it all the way. Anyway, it wasn't a really good Jenga game, so the director started to say, Andrew, tell Derek what you can sell on eBay. So I kind of went into my spiel and said, you got a bench player who's not doing very well, sell him on eBay, you know? And so at the end of the commercial, Derek said, hey, give me your phone number. And so sure enough, a week later, he called me up and said, hey, it's Derek. And I was like, Derek who? Oh yeah, Derek Anderson, the famous NBA basketball player.
he said, hey, I want you to sell my car. And so my wife and I, we drove out to Tualatin, which is where all the Blazers live. It's kind of fancy. And inexplicably, I drove an F-150, a big white F-150 at the time, and we parked not in front of his house, but across the street. And before we even turned off the engine, this woman came up, who are you? And I said, I'm friends with Derek. She said, well, I'm having people over. It was like 3 in the afternoon. I'm like, okay. She's like, so you're going to have to move your car. So sure enough, we started it up and we did a U-turn and parked in front of Derek Anderson's house. Incidentally, it was a Maybach. Have you guys even heard of that? It's like a custom, like German sports car that's like basically a small luxury limousine, but it's a sedan and has like, you know, bamboo shades with the remote control. And I was selling eBay because I was scraping together rent. I was doing eBay power selling. So I asked him, it's like, and he was only, I should say, only selling this because the custom one he had designed in his University of Kentucky colors was being shipped out. So this was sort of the one he bought to hold him over. So I said, well, how much do you want for this? And he goes, 200. And I was like, 200 what? It turns out he wanted $200,000. It's a little high. I got a lot of press, the Oregonian covered, but we were not able to sell his car, unfortunately. So that is my story of being run out of someone's lawn. I'm with you. I feel you. All right, so judges, have we had enough time? Yes, I should say they have. That brings us to our fourth storyteller, representing Wilson High School, Vivian Weinstein! Woo! How are we feeling? Yes! Here we go.
Hi. I wanted to just say a quick thank you for having me here, because this is really exciting, and I'm kind of spooked about how big it is. But anyway, getting to the story. So around mid-July in this last summer, my friend and I thought it would be a good idea to bus to Dairy Queen because we wanted some chicken nugs and we were hankering. Now, you see, on the way while we were waiting at the bus stop, she decided to tell me about her recent new tendencies to steal. And so I was like, okay, girl, like, you do you or whatever, but personally, I'm not for it. So as we got on the bus, it was all rickety, buses, how they are. Really not fun, but we still went. And as we got off to Dairy Queen, we ate our nugs, dipped in the good old ranch, and then we decided that it would be a good idea to go over to the 7-Eleven. And while we were there, she found a cereal and was like, girl, do you like that cereal? And I was like, yeah, it's delish. And she was like, I can get it for you. And I was like, girl, are you kidding me? No, I don't want that. And so already I was feeling self-conscious about being with her in this public area. And then we decided to go to Lamb's Thriftway. Dun, dun, dun. So as we're going in, a man quickly asks us what the date is. And I don't exactly remember when, but some point in mid-July. We go in, and it just seems like some regular guy asking us what the date is. I respond saying July something. And he says thank you, and we mosey on down on our way. And so first we go into the medicine section, and I already am thinking to myself, oh no. And my friend is looking at me and she says, cover me. And I said, cover you for what? And you'd think that we're in the medicine section, she'd go grab some cough syrup, something that could prematurely get us like in jail or something. And no, instead she decides to grab some Hello Kitty Band-Aids and forcibly tries to stuff them in her bag that somebody could see just right from the other aisle. And I say, girl, this is your decision to make, and I don't want to be there to interfere it, but just know that this is your decision, and I'm not going to interfere. This isn't a good one, but you make your own choice. I just, at the time, didn't want to be disrespectful to my friends, even though it was a terrible idea and decision, but she went along with it, stuffing these Hello Kitty pink Band-Aids into her bag. Now, we move on to the next aisle, and I want to buy my favorite snack, which is natural Cheetos. Living my life, okay. So we go into the aisle, everything's fine, I am just wanting to buy this, and she says, don't buy those, it's gonna look sketchy. It would look less sketchy if I actually bought them, girl. And the thing is I ended up not buying them because she convinced me out of it. I love my friends so much. So you see, after that, we start to leave, and she somehow gets a red bouncy ball and starts bouncing it out of the store. And we're followed by the same guy who asks us what the date is, and he says, "Stop right there. I see you girls." And I am just frozen, and I give her the most angry glare that I think I've ever given anybody ever, and it looked a little something like this. I was furious and fuming. Now I walk inside yet again to the store that I just dreaded to go in yet a second time. And he asks me for my ID, and I'm just like, "My name is Vivian Weinstein, I'm from Wilson High School, and I'm a sophomore." And so I just spread that out. I let him know who I am, and he asks her for hers, and she says, "Oh, I don't have my ID on me," when she clearly did. So now we go into this back section, and I'm so mad that I don't even look at her, and she's just texting me from smartphones. I love being a teenager in the 21st century. Like, just right in front of her, we're just texting, and she's like, "I'm so sorry for doing this." I'm just like, "You can't fix this, girl. Like, no, you just did this to me. You put me in this situation." And later, he decides to call her parents, and that was the last thing she wanted. And so her parents had to make the drive of shame up into the Lamb's Thriftway, and I decide to lighten up the mood and make a joke while her parents are just shamefully walking in, trying to pick up their deranged child and her friend. And so I say, "Oh, I was her accomplice." And the man who asked us what the date was and caught her for stealing decided to say, "Don't say that." And so, terrified as I already am, I just am like, "Sorry, I'm okay." And so I found out in the long run that not only did she steal 2 items, a red bouncy ball and pink Hello Kitty Band-Aids, but she decided to steal Burt's Bees lip balm while I was looking in the aisle for the natural Cheetos. So when I found that out, her total came to around like $875, and in the long run, her parents had to pay $200 for all of those 3 items that she stole. Now, once that situation ended, I left and went outside thinking to myself, "Oh my God." And what they had told me was, I cannot enter the store again until I'm 18 years old or without my lovely guardian in the back. Now, what this lesson has taught me is to really pay better attention to the friends I make. Thank you.
Give it up for Vivian! Well done. Well, all these stories are fantastic, aren't they? Give them a round of applause. Oh. I got 2 things to say. First, I love that you go to the Dairy Queen and then go to the 7-Eleven, only to top it off with a Thriftway. I guess that's how the kids are rolling these days. I love it. I have a confession to make. I was not exactly a shoplifter back in my eBay Power Seller days, but if you've been to Fred Meyer, there are those bulk bins, and I sort of treated them as a free sample area, if you will. I was never caught, but I feel like I've paid my debt. I have 2 small children who are grazers, and they only snack, and I spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars at Fred Meyer every year. So that's my confession. Judges, how are we feeling good? Are we ready for our final story of the evening? One moment. You guys having a good time? All right! And I should say, this is really exciting because we are in the brand new Franklin Library at the brand new Franklin campus. Wonderful. Do we have any Franklin parents in the house right now? I will potentially, I did a funny thing where I still use a paper calendar, so I signed up for some events at the end of February, and then I signed up for some events at the beginning of March, and I didn't really realize that those 2 connected until So I will potentially see you all out at the Embassy Suites on Saturday, because I'm going to be your MC and auctioneer at the Franklin Auction. So I'll see some of you again soon. All right, in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, we have our 5th and final storyteller representing Madison High School, Anna Cabello! Woo!
It's the summer before I enter first grade, and I'm staying with my grandparents for that summer. And soon my parents and brother would follow to move from Wisconsin to Oregon. And I'm sitting at the dining table eating whole grain cereal, which I hate. I hate whole grain cereal, yet my grandmother forced me to eat things like whole grains and quinoa, which is spelled with a Q, not a K. So, she's in the kitchen next to me doing her little Italy thing, making the sauce, kneading the bread for dinner. And my grandfather is an oddly buff Puerto Rican man, ripped. So he's in the back with a cigar hanging out of his mouth and he's doing some reps. And I just sit there begrudgingly eating my cereal. And then I look to my right, out of the window, and I see a big black van parked on our curb, and it's not an ice cream truck, which sadly, it actually says FBI in big yellow lettering. And I tell my grandmother, and she rushes over, and her face just pales of all color, and her eyes go wide, and she Hulk grips my arm and yanks me into the computer room to distract me. And she puts on this typing game with the world's most annoying music, and it's not even to the repetitive, stupid part of the song when a bomb sounds from the front of the house. And it's not a bomb. It was the FBI kicking down our door. And much like National Geographic with the wildebeest stampeding, that was the sound of their footsteps thundering through the hallway. And this guy comes in, he's 6 foot, with decked out in riot gear with a gun the size of me, and he has this Neanderthal brow, and I bet if you shined up his bald head, you could see your reflection in it quite clearly. And he's just get to the living room. And of course my grandmother has to say oh no, leave her here, it's fine, and he just... And so we're okay, we'll go. And so we go to the living room, and my grandfather's there, and he's on the couch, cuffed hands behind his back. And this guy puts a too cold, too tight, skin-pinching wrist cuff on my wrist and handcuffs me to my grandmother. And at this point, I'm sobbing. I can't see, I can't hear, I can't think, I can't breathe. There's snot running down my nose and into my mouth, and I can taste it, and it's tacky, and it's gross, and nobody is giving me comfort, and I can't suck my own thumb because guess what? I'm handcuffed to my grandmother. So, eventually, they take us to the back room to get their separate stories. And while my grandmother is speaking, the shrimpiest guy on the FBI team comes up and he's like, "Hey there, champ, how you doing?" I'm having a great time. And so he does the unthinkable. He pulls out a grape lollipop. And much like whole grain cereal, it is the bane of my existence. I hate grape flavored candy. But I am so lacking of comfort that I rip off the wrapper and I stick it in my mouth and I'm... Comfort at last. But then my grandmother's soft hand comes up, and she rips on the sucker stick and yanks it out of my mouth, and my teeth are vibrating and stinging, and it's so painful, and she looks at me with this icy glare and says, "Now is not the time." And I'm sitting there thinking, what, now is not the time for a grape lollipop in the middle of an FBI raid? And so, I've never seen her so angry, so mad, so livid at me. My whole life, my whole 4 years, she was a sweet old lady. But I guess in that time, she wasn't. And everything gets blurry after that. I don't really remember much. But it's 13 years later, and my grandfather will not be out of jail until I'm 27 years old. And my grandmother has already done her time. That summer, I was the alibi. My grandmother took me to the zoo, while my grandfather stole $3 million from an armored car. I know, pretty impressive, am I right? But in all seriousness, that's a really shitty thing to put a kid through. I felt like a pawn in their game, disposable to their use, and I'm not telling you the story because I want your sympathy or I want your I'm sorry, because I don't. This story is what makes me, me, and I wouldn't change that for the world. Even though they got in so much trouble and put my family through hell and back, I'm me because of it. Thank you.
Holy mackerel, give it up for Anna. What a way to end the slam. All right, at this time, don't get too comfortable, Anna. Let's welcome all 5 storytellers back up to the stage. If your phones aren't already on, turn them on. It's picture time, ladies and gentlemen. Parents, friends, get on up here. Time for pictures. Woo! One more time. Woo!
Everybody come out and yeah, the microphone's gonna be
Okay, nailed it.
No, dude, I was.
All right, one more time. Give him a round of applause. Let's get all the librarians up here.
First as a wave, I was like, what? Would you like a wave? Would you like a little wave? And all these photos are gonna look like deranged because I'm like. Shall we? Good job, you guys.
Okay.
What do we do? Shall we see?
We could do a pyramid.
Yeah, you guys can go sit down. Do you have any other combinations? Do you have any other combinations of people you want to do pictures of? Because I'm happy to do it.
Okay.
Once again, let's remember, we're all winners. These guys are all winners tonight. So I'm going to announce 3 fantastic storytellers. Then I'm going to announce the second place storyteller, and then I'm going to announce the winner. So, Asha, Sarah, and Vivian, come on up here. Give them a huge round of applause. And then tonight's runner-up, second place, Mechdies, congratulations, come on up. We've got prizes for everyone. And our winner of the first, truth be told, first annual Interscholastic Story Slam, Ana Cabello. Woo! All right. That's it. We'll see you next year.